Now, talking about today's session is focused on decommissioning software solutions or retiring a software solutions. Now, before I begin, let me give you an example why there is a need for a software solution. So let's take an example of the traditional Windows XP system. Now that system was, I would say, the most powerful system at that point of time, maybe a decade ago. There was no match to that operating system. But gradually, as the technology changed, as the hardware changed, the support started degrading, or the support cost was way above than the replacement cost. So that is one need, that people were forced to change from their Windows XP system to the newer version of the operating system. So any software which is built on today's system or today's architecture, maybe it's in terms of hardware architecture, maybe it's 32-bit architecture or 64-bit architecture, or the software architecture, like there are certain frameworks, certain libraries. So they do have a end cycle. So any software that is built today would definitely have an end time. The reason being is, it's not like that only the business changes, the technology changes as well. So along with the technology, the way we do business, the way the softwares are coded, they are also changed. A more mature version of architecture is designed, a more secure code is coded, and a more secure system is built in and around the business. So for example, earlier in our earlier times, there were different processors, like there were Pentium processors, then there was Pentium 2, 3, then came your Pentium dual core, then core 2 duo, then Pentium 4 processors, then came the era of i3, i5, i7. Now after i3, i5, i7, there were again the generation of processors. So currently the ongoing generation is the 7th generation of process. So these all things indirectly force the software which were built to be executed on these processors or on this hardware to be rebuilt, or to be retired completely, or to be rebuilt. So there were many systems which were migrated, there were systems which were completely retired, then there were systems which are constantly evolving. For example, if you consider a software product, it constantly evolves itself basis on the current hardware architecture. So there's a fair amount of calibration that's in between them. So it supports the ongoing system in terms of hardware and software. So always it's I would say it's a mandate, or it's a process in every organization, that time to time they would retire some of the software solution. Now that's the need of it. I mean, every organization does it. So let's see what all things are there in this particular decommissioning. Now coming to the basics, like I said, the needs. So application retirement, also called application decommissioning and application sunsetting, is the practice of shutting down redundant or obsolete business application while retaining access to the historical data. Legacy applications are often maintained solely to provide infrequent or sporadic access to data within the application database for regulatory or business purposes. Now, whenever an application is retired, the data which the application holds at that point of time will never be retired. Those data would be needed at any point of time. If there's an audit going on, and if we want to do an historical data analysis, we would be needing data. So whatever data which are stored in the traditional systems or traditional databases or traditional files, they all would be archived and stored at some servers, which as per the need would be allowed to be accessed, so that the company who is retiring a particular system should not be concerned about losing their data. So that's the ideology behind retiring the this application. So the application retires, but the data never retires. The data stays there because you cannot regenerate the data or fabricate the data or manipulate the data. Whatever data have been captured 10 years down the line would remain the same. There shouldn't be any alteration because that would again create compliance issues or regulatory issues. Now, what are the advantages of decommissioning a software? So the act of application retirement usually involves migrating data from the legacy application database to another data repository or archive store that can be accessed independently using industry standard reporting or business intelligence tools. So application retirement allows IT departments within companies to reduce the software, hardware, and resources required to manage legacy data. Now, when I talk about the advantage, so these are some of the advantage that it's involves migrating data for the legacy application database. So whenever a database migration happen, for instance, if you want to change your database system or retire your database system, you are moving from Microsoft SQL Server to Oracle. So the data which are already captured will also be needed to be migrated in the same format, in the same state. It shouldn't be like that after migrating the data, most of the data is corrupted, damaged, or manipulated. It shouldn't be like that. It has to be a smooth process wherein your data should be migrated in the similar state. For example, if you are purchasing something from online, so if the order status is open and it is not yet delivered to you, so whenever let's say that today we are migrating the data from Microsoft SQL to Oracle, so the open status of the order should remain as open when you are migrating the data or transferring the data to the Oracle system. It shouldn't be like that the status is changed to delivered. So these kind of nitty-gritty we need to take care of while migrating data from legacy applications to the newer improved version of the applications. Now, what made this decision to retire a software solution? So the support cost versus replacement cost. So the moment support cost is more than replacement cost, it's high time to decommission your software solution. The moment you realize, you understand that your support cost is way higher than your replacement cost, you should consider replacing your software. Now, replacing a particular software is not an easy business. You need to understand the nitty-gritties in and around it, the hardware calibration, the technology integration, the interfaces integration. There are many things involved when you consider replacing the software. So you need to do a calculative analysis about the support cost and the replacement cost. If your replacement cost is less than the support cost, then it's recommended you replace your software system or decommission your software system, solutions, whatever. So just because a system is still running and fully deprecated, it doesn't mean fully depreciated, it does not mean that it is in your best interest to keep it. Now, there are cases that the old system works better than the newer system. So that doesn't mean that you should keep using that system for ages and ages. There are some scenarios wherein the old system works better than the newer system, not in terms of performance, not in terms of efficiency, but in terms of the way the code has been, the way it has been coded, or the outcome that it is producing, which is kind of better than what is newly installed or configured. So you need to understand the insights in and around it, whether it is achievable or not. I mean, whether the current or the newer system would be taken into that stage wherein you could achieve the similar kind of expectation from that software or the outcome from that software. Till that point of time, you need to keep using that old system. So once you maintain that level of transparency, that level of efficiency from your newer system, or you are confident that it provides everything that is needed for the newer system to work, then you can retire your older system. Then there is, if you are running a standard operating system on your hardware, it can be relatively easy to upgrade without major disruption. Now these days there are many systems, especially the newer system, which offers free upgrades for a period of 2 years or 1 year. So that is also an advantage. Whenever you are upgraded to a newer system, you get free upgrades or upgrades at a very minimal cost to the newer system, because its hardware supports upgrading to the newer system. So that is again an advantage. Now these are the 8 milestone process which are involved in decommissioning a particular software solution. Now we would examine closely each of this milestone. So the milestone starts with first decommission planning, then it moves to completion of plan, then approval of decommission service, then service is offline, the old software service I'm talking about over here, then point of no return. Now this is the point wherein you won't be getting any return, whatever activity you are performing, like uninstalling software or migrating a particular uh, piece of hardware or the system downtime. So these all activities do not substantially return you anything. So that's the 5th milestone over here. Then officially the service ends, then completion of decommission, and finally removal of archive data. So whatever archive data is taken from the older system would be removed and would be kept in some particular server, which would be later used for reference purposes. Now here one thing I wanted to highlight, that whenever a particular software is retired or decommissioned, it is not a one-time activity, it's not a one-day activity. This activity is performed in phases. So firstly, the new system would be partially implemented for the end user. They would check the behavior of the end user, then they would take feedback, then they would improve their the newer system. Then gradually, bits by bits, component by component, they would be upgrading your older system. So it wouldn't be that okay, today is Friday, then Monday we would be on our new system. No, within 2 days you cannot decommission a particular software solution. It takes years, because if you go on implementing the newer system, there are challenges. They may not support a particular action or a particular operation. So we need to take care of those things as well. Whenever we are fully confident, then we go ahead and proceed with the decommissioning of that particular component within that particular phase of the decommission planning. So always understand, always remember one thing, that decommissioning of software solution is not a one-day activity. It takes years to plan it for a retirement of a particular solution, which are no longer needed or are no longer in demand. Step 1, here we do the decommission planning. So the activities are the service of decommissioning a software service. The service for decommissioning a software service is initiated. Here the service manager submits decommission request to his or her director, including rationale for actions. The service manager verifies that proceeding with decommission planning is approved at ITS director level. Now the outcome for this step is decommission planning approved. Now here basically the idea is to get the decommission plan approved first. Then step 2, we complete the plan. So the activities here are: decommission project manager is assigned by service manager. Because of the importance of a decommission decision, the project manager identifies and documents who is responsible for delegated portion of the process. Next, we identify and correlate that type of services and the types of user that use the service. If alternatives are available, identify alternatives services and develop a migration path to the alternative services. Develop a communication plan for each type of user and subservice. The project manager sets target dates for the following 7 milestones and communicates them to the service manager. So the plan is completed. Decommission of service approved. Services offline. When setting the state, consider the impact to your users. User will not able to access the service after this milestone. Point of no return. Service end. When setting the state, consider SLAs, license and warranties. The service is committed to these agreements until this milestone. Decommission is completed and data is removed. So all of this plan is part of the planning of decommissioning. So here we tend to create a roadmap kind of thing in order to at what date, at what point of time these all important milestones would be achieved. So the outcome of this plan is to plan the decommissioning services, or the plan to decommission the services finished. Next step is completion of plan. Now here the activities are: service manager submits decommission plan to all ITS director for review and approval. The service manager verifies that ITS director's team approves decommissioning the service. Now the outcome here is service decommission execution may proceed. Now the fourth step is service offline. Here the activities are: the offline and end dates are most important, and these dates must be communicated effectively to consumers as well as throughout information technology services. The notify tactical of the service offline and service end dates. Notify ITS accounting of the service offline and service end dates. If the service being decommissioned is in the public facing service catalog, make a public announcement of the service offline date. So here what it says, if the general public is using, make a public announcement that from this particular date your service would be offline. For example, a banking system is upgrading to a newer system, it would announce that starting this day onward the system would be upgraded, so this would be the downtime for it. Kindly do not use the system at these hours. So that would be a public announcement, which would either be through SMS or through any print media or electronic media. Now users can no longer access the system after the service offline date and act. The communication plan to direct users to alternative. Remove access to the service being decommissioned. Now modify WhatsApp monitoring to place the service into maintenance mode. Now modify HAM to reflect the decommissioning process state. The milestone what we achieve here is the service is no longer available to users. So here what we see is, regarding the pointer which says that remove access to the service being decommissioned. So all the users who are using that older system needs to be deaccessed, or their access needs to be revoked, so that they do not kind of interface between this process when this actual migration is happening, actual batch job schedulers are being executed. Now step 5 talks about the point of no return. This is the most time consuming activity, time consuming step or phase in this particular milestone. So the activities here are: during this phase the service remains steady to replay if needed. Resources are still allocated until the end date. The personnel hardware. Create an archive of the decommissioning target as it was on the offline date. Include in this archive the data archives that existed under normal operations. Comply with all data archival regulations. Continue to honor existing archival plan after decommission. Store the archive in a usable format. Get rid of data unless it will be needed. Verify the data removal date will be honored. Document the service, how to access the archive of the decommissioned service, what this service relies on, vendors or hardware, who work on this service, stop billing users, remove entry for the service from the ITS service catalog, verify migration of any functions identified as still needed. Source code remains in the code repository for reference and reuse in other projects. Notification of decommission. Examples of contacts that need decommission notification often include, but are not limited to the following: revoke certificates, example code signing, SSL certificates; firewall rules, service accounts, example LDAP service account, or Active Directory service account; backup services like Common Vault, automated monitoring, example Splunk; security scans, asset management, PCI listing, PII listing, job descriptions, removal from other systems, whitelists. So the milestone here is preparations to decommission the service are complete. Now step 6 focuses on service ending. So the activities here are: resources are deallocated, personnel become available for other assignments, decision is made for repurpose or retire hardware, stop paying vendor bills, finalize all accounts, final bill to customers, and refund for unused services. The milestone here is the service has ended, although some cleanup tasks remain. Moving on to step number 7, it talks about completion of decommission. So the activities here are: removal or reallocation of hardware often includes, but it is not limited to the following: unregistered MAC, remove DNS records, asset tag paperwork, inventory forms, return leased hardware, send hard drives to the system team for disposal, notify machine room manager that network parts are available, notify machine room manager that rack space is available, and decommission project manager signs off as decommission complete. Now the milestone here is the decommission process is complete. Next is removal of archival data. This is the last phase of this 8 milestone. Now here the activities are: data removal, archive is deleted, ham entry is archive deleted, and the milestone is the final archive of the service is deleted. Now these are the 8 steps, and in this presentation I have highlighted what all sub activities that are performed in each of these 8 steps. Now there would be a lot of documentation from a business analysis perspective that needs to be created. So performing activities are different things. So the documentation part a business analyst is responsible for. Whenever excuse me, whenever a particular legacy system is migrated to the newer system, so those all responsibility lies with the business analyst, like documenting and articulating the artifacts. Now how the checklist templates look like. So this is the checklist template which is used. This is just an indicative checklist which describes the summary section, the audience, how to identify obsolete application, what are the steps, what are the environments, archiving mechanism, then documentation, then disposal or reuse, performance indicators, and glossaries. So this is a checklist that you need to follow while creating your decommissioning plan for software solutions. Now these are the references which you could go through for your further learning. Now always remember one thing, that whenever this process happens, there are a lot of things that are impacted, so you need to be very focused on your impact analysis area before giving your final decision. So you need to understand the end customers who are using it. You need to do a feasibility analysis or feasibility study of the software which is being retired. You need to understand what would be the retiring mechanism, how it would be how it would be adding value to the organization, what are the support costs, what are the replacement costs. Those financial analysis you need to take care of. So that's all about this session on decommissioning software solutions.